All right. Hello, boys and girls. We are starting topic 5, and we're going to be moving into a little bit more multiplication than what we've been working on, but hopefully, we're going to be able to connect a lot of the things that you've been using for addition and subtraction and repeated addition to help us with all that multiplication because we're going to start stepping into some much bigger numbers than what you're used to working with. So, just a couple vocabulary terms before we get started is partial products. Partial products is going to be a big part of what we use with these larger numbers because we're going to look at the parts and breaking those numbers apart, like taking 26 and breaking it into much nicer, easier numbers. Compensation is going to help us with that as well. It's another word for estimating and finding those nicer numbers. And I like to use the word nicer because they're not always easier to work with, but they're just a nicer number to work with. So let's make a connection back to a few topics ago where we looked at arrays to help us with our multiplication. And if I had this array, hopefully this is looking somewhat familiar. If I do this, I have 2 rows of 3, or connecting it to the multiplication problem of 2 times 3 equals 6. My 2 rows of 3 equals 6. And we're going to hopefully look at much larger arrays to help us with some of those bigger numbers and the breaking apart. But like I said, I just wanted to make that connection for us. But what I would like to do here is take a look at this problem. We have a tennis stadium, and there's these bleachers, and each of these bleachers can only hold 100 people. But they want to know how many seats are all together then in that stadium. Okay? So all together. And we've been spending a lot of time on looking at part wholes and how to do repeated addition. And if you look, I could look at this as one really big part whole diagram and say that I have to put all of these parts together. And I could say, well, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600. Okay. But what happens if I had a lot more sections? Think of the arena where the Sabres play. There's a lot more than just 6 sections there. So we could be adding 100 a whole lot more times. So what if I said, could I connect this and say, well, I have 100 6 times, or 100 times 6. And I'm hoping that if I move this up a little, if I think of it as 100 times 6, I'm hoping your mind's kind of turning some wheels in there. We already know this is 600, but let's kind of take a look here and see if we can figure out where that 600 really came from. I can say that I have 1 times 6, which we know is 6. I could then even take it a step further and then say, well, I had 2 zeros here, and now I have 2 zeros in my answer. So we took our 100 plus 100 plus 100 plus 100 plus 100 plus 100, and we shortened it. We made it smaller. We made it easier into 100 times 6 to get 600. And what's nice is because it's a multiple of 100, it's just a matter of adding those zeros. So let's take a look at a practice problem here for you now. Okay? And this is on your reteaching. We're going to do number 1 together, and then I would like you to try number 2 on your own. All right. So let's take a look at number 1. So they want us to take a look at 4 times 10. Well, they give us our 10s here. So we have 10, 10, 10, and 10. Those are our longs. And that's where this comes from, the adding of the 10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10. Well, 10, 20, 30, 40. Now, you're probably already thinking, well, Mrs. Jink, why didn't you just do 4 times 10? I'm just trying to make you see this connection. So I could add 10 4 times, or I can think of it as 4 times 10 is 40. Multiplying by 10, we're going to add 1 0. So now I would like you to go ahead and try this with 2 times 100. And then let's go over this now. So we have 2 times 100, okay? 2 hundreds here. These are each 100. Okay, 100. That's where the 100 plus 100 comes together to get 200. Now, 2 times 100 then is also going to be 200. All right. For your practice problems tonight, I would like you to try numbers 3 and 4 on your own and see how you can do. All right. Let's take a look at the other sheet that you're going to be working on tonight. And this is going to be focusing on same thing, looking at the multiplication facts of tens and hundreds. These nice numbers, and they're nice because they end in 0. Okay, so let's take a look at this. What this means is, let's say I have these numbers here. I have 7 times 4. It's a basic fact. Is 28. So we're going to put that there. Now, I have 7 times 40. And it's really not all that different, except for we added a 0. So I'm going to box out my basic fact here. So I still have 7 times 4, which is 28. But I can't forget about Mr. 0. So I need to bring him over. Okay? Now, I have 7 times 400. But looking at this with that close lens, we still have our basic facts. So I'm still going to say, well, 7 times 4 is 28, but now I have 2 zeros, which I can't forget about, so I have to bring those over. What do we notice here? I have no zeros in this first number, I have 1 0 in this number, and 2 zeros in that number. And all that means is these are that pattern that we're looking for, that if I multiply by a number with a 10, I'm going to have another 0. If I multiply by hundreds, I'm going to have 2 zeros. So this is the nice part about tens and hundreds, is they're nice, easy numbers with the zeros. And that's what we're going to be focusing on. So 9 times 3 is my basic fact. This is 27. I'm going to box my basic fact here. 9 times 3 is 27. And add a 0. And then I have my other basic fact. 9 times 3 is 27, but now I'm going to have my 2 zeros. So again, my pattern, 1 0 to 2 zeros. Let's take a look at your reteaching sheet that I'm going to have you work on tonight. With a few, you're not doing all these practice problems, so please don't do all of them. If you feel like you're extra and you need a little bit more challenge, go right ahead. But what we're going to focus on is, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger if I can, just so it's not as small on your end. Okay, let's take a look at number, there we go. Let's take a look at number 1 and 2. Okay, we're going to have to box that basic fact, or highlight, or circle, whichever you would like to do at home. So my basic fact here is 8 times 8, which is 64. And then I'm just going to make sure I don't forget about my 0 and bring it on over. Okay, same thing for number 2. We're going to box that basic fact, which in this case is 6 times 6, which is 36. And then I'm going to bring over my 0. We're going to do one more together before I set you loose. Let's look at number 4. Okay, my basic fact here is 5 times 2. Well, 5 times 2 is 10. And what do you notice about our basic fact here? It has a 0 in it. So 5 times 2 equals 10. This 0 is not going to be counted in these two. I still need to bring over my 2 zeros. So in this case, my basic fact has a 0 that needs to be included in that final answer. It can't be included in the 0 count. So just be careful when you're going through your practice problems that the basic fact, if it ends in a 0, does not get left out or counted in. Okay.